Hello, everybody. Now you've done the poll. Now we're going to actually talk about the future of energy and energy transition. And I'm going to begin the discussion with Amin Nasser, who, of course, is the president and CEO of Saudi Aramco. Amin, welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
Amin, I'd like to take you back in time, not back to 1980 when you joined Aramco, but only take you back 1 week. A week ago, you gave a very important and impactful speech in Singapore in which you said current transition planning for the energy transition does not take into account the needs of Asia and the global South. What did you mean by that?
You know, just to explain what's currently happening, we are, as Saudi Aramco and as a kingdom, we are investing big time in renewable and hydrogen and carbon capture and storage. So we are for the transition, but at the same time, we are making sure that we are growing our oil and gas activities and petrochemicals. So if you look at our emissions and methane and CO2, it is the lowest. So we are not really against the transition. Actually, we are for the transition, especially with the Kingdom Green Initiative and all of that. The issue that we are seeing between the global north and the global south, that in the global south, they are using today 1/10 of the energy compared to the global north per individual. Basically, if you look at it, it's 22 barrels per individual in the US, it's 9 in Europe, it's only 1.4 barrel per individual in India, and it's 1 barrel in Africa. At the end of the day, cost matters, and we can see when you want to have a transition that is acceptable to all, especially where the growth in population and GDP is mainly in the global south, you need something affordable. The average per capita income in the global south, you're talking about $6,600 to $9,600 compared to $63,000 to $68,000. So you need an energy transition that is affordable, secure, and at the same time sustainable. We are seeing today in the global south, the issues that they are raising in terms of affordability is of a high concern, and they need a just and inclusive transition that takes into consideration their needs and requirements.
So when you say a different thinking, how does the thinking need to change?
I think what you need to do is to transition by focusing first in reducing the emission from existing energy sources. We talked about coal peaking up. Coal increased last year by 2 million barrels of oil equivalent. We are at record level in oil, at record level in coal, and at record level in gas. So while we are not achieving our target of reducing coal, and it is continually increasing, we need to focus on reducing emissions. We achieved through efficiency improvement 90 million barrels over the last 15 years, 90 million barrels reduction of oil equivalent, compared to 15 million barrels of oil equivalent that was added by solar and wind.
So in the speech, you used the phrase a multidimensional energy transition. What is that?
Well, you need to take the economic maturity of every country, their needs and their requirement, and then transition, it will always depend on their economic maturity and what they can afford at the end of the day. If we need to help them in terms of making sure they don't get to coal, biomass, and more use of other sources that are not clean, we need to extend support by developed countries and to the global south for them to be able to transition. Because if I look at the cost today in the global north for power, for energy, if you look at Europe or the West in general, you see the cost of power is increasing. What was promised when the whole issue of transitions came, that it will create jobs and it will reduce the energy cost. Well, what we are seeing is the energy cost where you are transitioning more is increasing and the creation of jobs is not happening. So you need to reduce the cost, and you need to show the rest of the world that the cost is decreasing, not increasing because of the transition.
So you've mentioned emissions. Obviously, that's a big focus for Saudi Aramco. CCUS, what are the focus for you in terms of managing emissions?
Well, we're building one of the biggest projects at 9 million ton by end of 27, early 28. And basically, we have been working on for a number of years to identify the aquifers that will create the hub that would be required to facilitate not only the 9 million ton, but other emissions, CO2, that might come from the rest of the industries in the kingdom. So we are creating a hub that will cater not only for Aramco, but for the rest of the kingdom. And we identified the aquifers, the storage capacity through exploration and drilling the pilot wells that will be sufficient to satisfy the kingdom requirement by 2060.
So where do you think you are in terms of turning CCUS into a commercial business?
Well, CCUS today, without incentive, it's a cost. So at the end of the day, companies to achieve their net zero, we are doing it. It's a cost for us. We're getting some support from the Ministry of Energy. The Ministry of Energy is very supportive when it comes to carbon capture and storage. And through that support, and because of our plan to be net zero by 2050, we need to execute projects like this and others in the future to meet our net zero by 2050. But the cost of these projects, these are big plants. It will require cost mainly in the capture of CO2. Then you have the transportation and then the injections in the world. Most of the cost is in the capturing of the CO2.
So really, people talk about big oil. There's a new business called big carbon, which is the management of the carbon business.
Absolutely.
So, of course, Saudi Aramco has the longest vision of any oil company in the world, but you do live in a world of volatile oil prices. I think everybody would like to know kind of how you and Aramco see, from where we are today, see the market in the rest of this year and into next year, given that it's been torn between, on the one side, geopolitics, on the other, supply and demand?
Well, I think the market is currently balanced today. It's definitely the increase in interest rates, what happened in China had an impact, but still it is balanced in terms of supply-demand fundamentals. We are looking at 104.5 an average for this year. The fourth quarter, we're looking at close to 106 million barrels. Gas is also increasing. So next year, we are anticipating a growth of about 1.5. We think the stimulus package that the central bank in China, the growth in petrochemical, we are seeing significant growth in petrochemical in China, naphtha and LPG, mainly because of their transition, by the way. In every, I see a wind blades here, there, and for a 5 megawatt of wind blades, you need about 50 ton of plastic. For an electric car...
So repeat that again so people hear that.
For 5 megawatt of wind generated power, you need 50 ton of plastic. For every electric car, you need about 200 to 230 kilogram of plastic. 10% by volume, 50% by volume, 10% by weight. So the transition, even by the way, in solar panels, we have 10% comes from fiber and all of that. So for the transition to happen, you need more oil. So China is increasing in naphtha and LPG. In jet fuel, there is small impact on gasoline because of the buildup in electric vehicles and because of the economic situation. But in general, there is still growth in China. When people talk about China, I see that they are always trying to maximize the downside and ignoring the upsides, right, unfortunately.
So we'll come back and talk about that. I think just the last, we're going to invite our other colleagues up in a moment. So a big question, but a very short answer. Is AI having any impact on Saudi Aramco?
Definitely. AI is important and strategic, and we do it. We have created a business 2 years ago for digital and AI, and it is included in everything. If you visit our 4 IR center, you will see everything is, all our equipment managed using data and using AI. And we are building the use cases, which is important and critical for our business. 300 to 350 use cases right now we are creating. And these use cases is what, with AI application, each use case has a timeline, has a cost savings. With the application of AI, and I can later on in the
Right.
give you some examples, but it is really giving us a lot of cost reduction. It helps us not only in cost reduction and more efficiency, also in reducing our carbon footprint.
Well, thank you. Let me invite up our other panelists, if we can. Mohammad Abunayyan. I'm looking for our other panel. Here they come. He's chairman of ACWA, and Luc Rémont, and then I'll introduce them both as they take their seats. Mohammad is the chairman of ACWA Power, which has 65 gigawatts in the Middle East and around the world. He's also chairman of Vision Invest and really a champion of Vision 2030. And Luc Rémont is the CEO and chairman of EDF, which is known as the French nuclear utility, but is also a very big player in wind and solar renewables around the world. So welcome both of you to the panel. Thank you. I thought I would just start by picking up from where Prince Abdulaziz left off today when he talked about the role of renewables in the kingdom, and asked both of you just how you see the role for solar and wind in Saudi Arabia and its growth potential.
Thank you for inviting me to join this great audience. To be frank with you, I don't know why you invite me to be in this panel after the great presentation of His Royal Highness, Prince Abdulaziz, and the great speech, and really how he showed to everybody in the world that what Saudi Arabia has done and has made this country is really 100 steps ahead compared to many countries that they talk a lot and they do very little. But you know, it's really, I have to say, this is very difficult. But for us in ACWA Power, we are very proud and we are delighted that we believe in the green energy. I'm not here to have any confrontation with my big brother, who is, you know, for us, is our live is always depending on him, how we live in this country. But reality today, we believe in renewables since 2008, 2009, we done our first decision in the strategy. We done our implementation in 2010. And I have to say, I think, as he said, His Royal Highness today, you know, Saudi Arabia is not giving subsidy as many other countries. Saudi Arabia is getting very high returns using, you know, the renewable versus the conventional energy. But you have to say that, you know, I'm sure you know it better, that you cannot really take renewable and replace the conventional. You need both to make it happen successfully, and you have the right solution.
Right. Luc, you can invest anywhere in the world in terms of renewables. You have 5 or 6 gigawatts in Saudi Arabia now, more to come. Why the kingdom?
Well, I think it comes first because of the speed at which Saudi has taken the challenge of going low carbon on electricity. And we have very limited parallel in the world. We have found here in Saudi partners and an ecosystem where we can bring our know-how and work together with our partners to ambition to go in a couple of years up to 6 gigawatts, as you said, of low carbon generation, renewable generation, but also with an approach of electrification that is comprehensive, which is not just taking the renewables generation, which has, of course, great benefits, but also intermittency, but also starting to move now in the direction of having a full system that is sustainable in a low-carbon electricity approach, including storage, where we have pumping storage projects and also battery storage projects. All of that combined makes a system for electricity that is reliable and uses less and less carbon.
So when both of you look at renewables, obviously a lot of money going into wind and solar, general, not just in the kingdom, is enough money going into the infrastructure, into the grids, into storage?
And this is what is really differentiating factor in Saudi Arabia. Thanks to our great leadership and thanks to His Royal Highness, the Minister of Energy, many countries, they want to do it, but they did not know how to put priorities. I think in Saudi Arabia, really they thought about this grid early and how to strengthen the grid and how to make the grid is available to take this renewable. Because in many countries, you know, the biggest obstacle today is not about renewable, is really the infrastructure, that available, the grid is availability, and how you will be able to take the renewable, because it's a different in the operation in the system. And that's what make here successfully that Saudi Arabia reach 44 gigawatt project under construction, project under operation, project in advanced stage of development, that there is clear vision and clear objective that this grid is going to take 130 gigawatt in the future of renewable. And the storage, as you see today, you know, you are talking about contracted storage of 26 gigawatt, and storage by 2030, you are talking about 48 gigawatt. This is going to be the biggest storage today in any system. We are, again, you know, as I'm sure that you know, we are working in 14 countries today. And this is we've seen all these countries, how they do and how they make it. The only 2 countries, I have to say, that they are only very well prepared, and we are participating in it, is Saudi Arabia and China. I have to say this is the 2 countries that I have seen. They have a clear plan and a clear execution, and they commit and they deliver.
So, Luc, do you want to comment both? I think that you have some support in the audience. Comment on the question of infrastructure, not only Saudi Arabia, but looking around the world. And wanted to ask you about, we hear there are a lot of issues now about supply chains in the renewable supply chain, how you see it on a global basis.
Well, as the world is moving into the direction of renewables and electrification, of course, there are tensions on the global supply chain. This is particularly true for wind power today, notably offshore wind. It's also true for cable. You know, high voltage cable is clearly something that is under tension everywhere in the world. Now, the more the countries can define a very clear roadmap and stick to their roadmap, the less depending they are on these supply chain tensions. And I really believe that the kingdom is super clear on the direction. So that's the best way to avoid the tensions that might go up and down on the supply chain, is to have a super clear roadmap and to stick to the roadmap. And this is the case in the kingdom. In our case, the most critical resource that we are aiming at today is knowledge and people. And that's why I believe that electrification is today the best chance for the kingdom, because we are, thanks to the projects that we are leading today, we are building competencies and capacities here in the kingdom with people, with great engineers that are trained in the country, who have the opportunity to start their careers on the projects that we are leading, moving up from a solar platform, which is not that complex to build, to now the last project that we are engaged in, which is a full city in Amala on the Red Sea, where we are aiming at having a 100% low carbon electrified city plus water, which is a fully integrated electrical system, also built thanks to the competencies that we are also building in the country. So man resources, competences built in the country is the most critical resource.
If you allow me, you know, I would like just to add one thing, and this is, it has been also presented by His Royal Highness, that ACWA Power has worked together with BIF to localize the value chain of renewable.
Yes.
5 years ago, we started, you know, our colleagues and our partners from BIF to go to China and to go through this. And today, I'm very happy to say I was in Hexagon last week, and I saw the land has been contracted for $6 billion investment of solar and wind manufacturing, midstream and downstream. And Saudi Arabia is going to be in production of 20 gigawatt by end of 2026, you know, where you will see the first production. You are talking about, you know, and this is very important and very relevant, that China came to Saudi Arabia to use Saudi Arabia is the hub, as His Royal Highness said. It's not for Saudi Arabia local content. It's a hub for the world.
Right.
And this manufacturing in Hexagon will export to MENA region, to Africa, to Asia, to Europe and United States. You know, and if you see the expansion plan is a huge. So I have to thank BIF under the great guidance and the support of the Ministry of Energy. But I would go to the youth, where His Royal Highness has mentioned about our young youth. ACWA Power has invested in vocational training, and we are very happy to tell you today that we have 15,500 young youth has been graduated from this ACWA in Riyadh. Right. Today, we have 830 boys and girls studying in the vocational training, because local content is not about production only. It's about human capital. That's more difficult, and that's more important and relevant. And this is what we always promise in ACWA Power, not only to do what we are doing for our own businesses, but to be able to do things for the ecosystem.
Right. So let me ask, Amin, how much solar are you using?
Solar?
Solar, are you using integrated into your system?
We are building in collaboration with PIF and ACWA Power. We are a 30% partner in what is being built in the kingdom as part of the 70% allocation for the 3 entities. We use it as part of the grid, because at the end of the day, we have to be concerned about scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 is the emission that comes from our facilities, and we take care of that by making sure that we are more efficient. But scope 2, and this is where renewables and others will have an impact in reducing our emissions. So at the end of the day, when we invest in building more renewable in the kingdom, it supports the kingdom, but at the same time support Saudi Aramco in terms of reducing our emission and meeting our net zero by 2050.
Right. Thank you. So, Luc, let me ask you a question, switching to nuclear. It was in 1974 when President Pompidou of France said France is going nuclear. Today, 75% of your electricity is nuclear. You're one of the leading utilities in it. But for a number of years, you were sort of an island because nuclear, shall we say, went out of fashion. Now there's this big revival of interest in nuclear around the world. Why is it happening, and how do you see this revival?
Well, there's clearly a global revival for nuclear, which is, I don't think this is a question of ideology. This is just the result of electricians doing their math, which is that if you want to be serious about having an electrical system that works 24/7 and has also the lowest possible content of carbon, you need to have dispatchable power sources that are not consuming carbon. And the only ones that are doing this are hydro and nuclear. So that's why a large number of countries are considering nuclear in the future as part of their electrical mix. Some of them are starting from a very important part of existing nuclear. That's the case for the US, for France, and today for China. Others are starting from a much lower part, but depending on everyone's legacy, there is a must at the end to create an electrical system that can resist to the fluctuation of demand day in, day out, independently from the fluctuation of wind and sun. And that's something that today has no other answer, where there is no part of hydro plus nuclear. If you have big resources of hydro, you may be fine. Right. If you don't have big resources of hydro, then you need a portion of nuclear.
Now, a very hot subject in nuclear is small modular reactors. You guys know nuclear technology. Is that the future?
Well, the great news is that there is innovation in nuclear. That's the great news. Any industry that is showing initiatives, new developments, new ideas, shows that this industry is in good shape. And it's great to see that the nuclear industry is attracting new ideas thanks to SMRs.
Dan, if you allow me, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
You have to know that I don't like nuclear.
What did he say?
It is really, I have to say, nuclear is great for a country like France. For some other countries, they have no other alternative. But, for us in this region, in many regions in the world, you need safe energy, and very safe. You need competitive, you need reliable, but you need also economic. And thanks to the Chinese, They have made the technology of renewable affordable, 24 hours, and very safe. And I have to say that thanks to the Chinese, they made us less dependent on this nuclear, thanks to the oil and gas industry and the great, in these countries, we not need nuclear. Nuclear, in my opinion, my friend, my brother, it is great for Europe. This is their issues, and some other countries. And this SMR is going to be shut down. Why? You know why? Because the United States of America and some other European countries, they cannot do these data centers green. They have to come to Saudi Arabia to do green data center. And this is the only country will lead the data center, will lead all the demand of 10% of an energy.
Well, let me interrupt you there,
Yes.
because I know that Saudi Arabia has great potential in this, but I was talking with Luc before about, is this demand for data centers, is it as real as people think, or will efficiency counterbalance it? Because right now there's almost a panic in the United States about how are we going to meet our electricity demand in other countries. But I think you have a mixed view of that.
Right. If I can just answer on one word on nuclear, I mean, everyone is free to have its own opinions on everything,
Yes,
of course.
sure.
And my friend above everyone, of course. I would just like to say that if the Chinese had invented the electricity that goes renewable 24/7, I don't think that they would be building 10 reactors per year.
That's what you are buying in Amman. Huh?
being-
You buy your battery
love
in
a debate.
24 hours. We just said that. I bought in the Red Sea 24 hours.
Okay,
was
so let's let Luc and then Mohammed,
I was
your
saying
chance.
on a country level, of course.
Yeah.
On a country level. Look, on data centers, that's clearly a growing demand for electricity. It's going to be a growing demand in the future. That's something that, of course, depending on the countries, represents a more or less big part of the future demand in electricity. It can be fulfilled, I believe, in each of the countries. It just needs to be taken as a growing industry with, of course, the permanent effort on being more efficient from an electricity and energy standpoint, and to make sure that we supply this demand with sustainable ways of supplying the electricity to these data centers. Yes, this is going to be growing. This is also an opportunity for each of the countries, and I believe it is one for the kingdom, and I saw the data center industry really rising in the kingdom over the last few years as an opportunity to build a data environment in the kingdom as a great opportunity for business here.
Amin.
I think, just to answer I think we need all sources of energy. We need SMRs, we need solar, we need wind, we need hydrogen, and we need oil and gas. And I'm sure some coal will still be there by 2050. So you need all sources of energy.
Sure.
When you talk about data center need lower cost energy. Today, the cost per kilowatt hour in the UK is around 27 cents per kilowatt hour. In Germany, it's 17 cents per kilowatt hour. In France, with the nuclear, with the transition, with all of it, it's still 14. The aggregate in the US is 7.8. But here in the kingdom, if you look only at gas, it's 4.8 cents. If you add renewable that Mohammed talked about, at 2 cents per kilowatt hour, the combination of the two, you are going to have the lowest cost energy to build data centers anywhere in the world, because this is the place for it.
Mohammed, do you agree?
He is my boss. I cannot disagree with him, because Amin will not, make my meeting. I'm requesting a meeting with him.
Yeah.
Don't put me in trouble. But I think what we are saying here, we are very blessed in this country. We have a seawater for cooling. And if you see the cooling system for data center, Saudi Arabia is going to be the best competitive and energy use of data center in the world. AI and data center, we have the human capital, this great young youth in this country. We have the place, we have the space, and we have the great leadership is more important and relevant, because they have the will and they have the means and they walk the talk, as we said.
So it's wonderful, this panel on discussion of future energy trends. circles back to all the issues that have been talked about this morning about AI, about Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia, and how this push towards energy trends and AI also ties into the blessed energy position of Saudi Arabia. So please join me in thanking our three panelists for a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.